pen hovered over the signature line, Derrick Donovan's manicured hand steady, as he prepared to end 8 years of marriage with a flourish. His lips curled into that familiar smirk, the one that had once made Maya's heart flutter, but now made her stomach clench. "Let's get this over with," he said, not bothering to look at her as he signed with a dismissive chuckle. "I have a meeting at 2. Maya sat perfectly still, her face a careful mask hiding the storm inside. 8 years of diminishment. 8 years of watching the man she loved slowly erase her. 8 years of pretending not to notice the other women, the condescension, the casual cruelty. "Actually, Mr. Donovan," Thomas Blackwell's voice cut through the silence as he slid a document across the polished mahogany table. "Before we finalize anything, there's something you should see." Derrick barely glanced at the paper. "What's this?" "The Eloise Montgomery Trust, established 1982, Thomas replied, his voice steady as he adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Maya watched as confusion flickered across Derrick's face, followed by irritation. "What does Maya's dead mother's trust have to do with our divorce?" "Everything," Thomas said simply. "Have you ever watched someone who thought they were untouchable suddenly realize they've been outplayed by a woman they underestimated? That moment when their smug certainty crumbles into disbelief, then panic, then rage? I watched it happen to my husband of 8 years as he learned that the woman he was discarding like yesterday's newspaper had been protected by a mother's foresight decades before he ever entered the picture. What would you do if you discovered that your mother had planted the seeds of your redemption decades ago, knowing someday you might need to rise from the ashes of a man's betrayal? Hey, my beautiful queens. There's something powerful about the way our mothers and grandmothers saw storms coming long before clouds gathered on our horizons. They knew what it meant to love a man who might one day stop seeing you. They understood what it was to build something beautiful only to have someone else claim it as their own. And in their quiet, determined way, they prepared shelters we wouldn't know we needed until the rain began to fall. That's the inheritance that doesn't always show up in bank accounts or jewelry boxes. The foresight of black women who've weathered enough storms to recognize the warning signs, who plant seeds of protection in soil they may never see bloom. Today's story is about reclaiming what was always yours, about the power that lies dormant within you until the exact moment you need it most, and about how our mother's wisdom echoes through generations, waiting for the perfect moment to save us even from ourselves. The Eloise Montgomery Trust, Thomas continued, his voice carrying the weight of decades of legal expertise, contains specific provisions regarding Mrs. Donovan's financial protection in the event of divorce. Derrick's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "That's absurd. Maya signed a prenup. It's ironclad." "The prenuptial agreement is indeed valid," Thomas acknowledged, opening a leather portfolio. "However, Mrs. Montgomery established this trust when her daughter was just 8 years old, after her own difficult divorce. The trust was structured to remain dormant until certain conditions were met." Maya felt a strange calm settling over her as she watched Derrick's expression shift from dismissive to wary. For 8 years, he had wielded that prenup like a weapon, reminding her that she'd entered their marriage with comparatively little and would leave with even less if she ever crossed him. "What conditions?" Derrick demanded, leaning forward. Thomas nodded to the striking woman beside him. "Ms. Washington, would you explain?" Imani Washington, her locks pulled back in an elegant updo, placed another document on the table. Mrs. Montgomery included a provision that would activate additional protections if Maya ever found herself in a divorce proceeding. Specifically, if the divorce involved a prenuptial agreement that Mrs. Montgomery's designated trustees deemed unfair. Maya's mind flashed to her mother's strong, independent, always 3 steps ahead. Eloise Montgomery had built a successful interior design firm in the 1980s when few black women were welcomed in Atlanta's luxury design world. She taught Maya everything about resilience, about standing tall when the world tried to diminish you. "That's ridiculous," Derrick scoffed. "Maya's mother has been dead for 15 years. She can't reach from the grave to interfere in our divorce." "Actually, she can," Imani replied, her voice calm but authoritative. "Trust law allows for precisely this kind of conditional provision. Mrs. Montgomery established a board of trustees who have been monitoring the trust and Mrs. Donovan's marriage. Upon your filing for divorce, they conducted the evaluation required by the trust documents. Thomas nodded. And they determined that the prenuptial agreement fails to meet the standard of fairness established in the trust. Derrick's laugh held a note of uncertainty now. This is a desperate attempt to circumvent a legally binding agreement. No judge will uphold this. 3 judges already have in similar cases involving the Montgomery Trust provisions, Thomas replied, sliding another document forward. This is the ruling from the Georgia Supreme Court last year, affirming the validity of conditional trust provisions like the ones Mrs. Montgomery established. Maya watched as Derrick scanned the document, his confident smile fading. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely blindsided. What exactly are you claiming this means? Derrick asked, his voice tight. Thomas looked at Maya, giving her a slight nod. This was the moment they had prepared for. It means, Maya said, finding strength in her mother's foresight, that the prenup is superseded by the trust provisions. The Donovan Heights development, the one built on land purchased with my mother's investment, reverts to me entirely. Derrick's face darkened. That's my flagship property. It's worth $68 million. Maya finished for him. Yes, I know. You can't do this, Derrick hissed, all pretense of civility gone. That development has my name on it. A name you'll be removing, Thomas interjected. The trust is quite clear. The property returns to Maya's full control, including naming rights. Maya felt a strange calm settle over her. For years, she had watched Derrick take credit for Donovan Heights, never acknowledging that the initial capital had come from her mother's investment fund that Maya had contributed to their marriage, an investment he had insisted be rolled into his company rather than maintained separately. There's more, Imani continued, producing another document. The trust also stipulates that any business built using Montgomery Trust assets must be properly accounted for in divorce proceedings. Meaning, Derrick demanded. Meaning that Donovan Enterprises, which was established using a $2 million loan from the Montgomery Trust in 2016, is subject to equal division, regardless of the prenuptial agreement. Maya watched as the reality of the situation dawned on Derrick. His empire, the one he'd built while belittling her contributions, while flaunting his affairs, while reminding her that she was replaceable, had been built on her family's foundation all along. No, Maya said quietly. My mother did. She knew what it was like to give everything to a man who took it all for granted. She made sure history wouldn't repeat itself. Derrick turned to Thomas. I'll fight this. I'll tie it up in court for years. You're welcome to try, Thomas replied, unruffled. But I should mention that the Montgomery Trust includes a litigation fund specifically established for this scenario. Mrs. Montgomery anticipated resistance and ensured her daughter would have the resources to prevail. Maya thought of her mother then. How she'd sit at their kitchen table late at night, poring over documents, planning and preparing. Always have a path only you know about, baby, she'd told Maya. Men like your father, they think the rules don't apply to them. Sometimes you have to write your own rules. There is an alternative, Imani offered, sliding forward yet another document. A settlement agreement that's considerably more generous than your prenuptial terms, but less severe than what a court would likely award if we litigate the trust provisions fully. Derrick stared at the paper, his jaw working. Maya could almost see him calculating, weighing his options, looking for an angle. You have 24 hours to consider the settlement offer, Thomas said, standing to indicate the meeting was concluding. After that, we proceed with the full trust enforcement. As Thomas and Imani gathered their materials, Derrick remained seated, his eyes fixed on Maya. You won't get away with this, he said, his voice low. You're nothing without me. You think you can run Donovan Heights? You haven't worked in 8 years. Maya stood, smoothing her dress, a design from Felicia Raymore's latest collection. Another successful black woman who defied expectations. I haven't worked for you in 8 years, she corrected him. But I've been designing private residences for select clients since you were too busy with Clarissa to notice my comings and goings. The shock on his face was worth every secret meeting, every hushed phone call, every portfolio review she'd conducted while he thought she was at yoga or lunch with friends. Montgomery Design has been operational for 18 months, she continued. We're small but exclusive. The Westmoreland renovation that was featured in Architectural Digest last month? That was mine. The prestigious project had been the talk of Atlanta's social circles. A historic Buckhead mansion transformed with a blend of traditional elements and contemporary design that honored the home's legacy while bringing it into the modern era. That's impossible, Derrick whispered. They credited JM Design Studio. Maya smiled. JM Design Studio is a subsidiary of Montgomery Design. J for Jasmine, my middle name. M for Montgomery, my mother's name. She gathered her purse and nodded to Thomas and Imani. I believe we're finished here. As she walked toward the door, Derrick called after her. His voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. You planned this all along. While I was building an empire, you were plotting to steal it. Maya paused, turning to face the man who had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable. No, Derrick. While you were building an empire on my family's foundation, I was reclaiming my own power. There's a difference. She met his gaze steadily. You taught me an important lesson, though. You always said business isn't personal. You're right. This isn't personal. It's justice. With that, she walked out, leaving behind the man who had signed their divorce papers with a laugh just weeks earlier, confident that the prenup would leave her with crumbs while he kept the bakery. Outside the law office, Maya took a deep breath of the crisp December air. Atlanta stretched before her. The city where she'd grown up, fallen in love, been broken, and now, finally, been reborn. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Zora. Is it done? Maya smiled and typed back, just beginning. If you've ever witnessed someone get exactly what they deserved after underestimating a strong black woman, hit that like button right now. How did we get here? Let me take you back. 9 years earlier, Maya Montgomery stood in the doorway of her design studio, watching as the movers carried out her drafting table. The space that had been her sanctuary for 5 years, where she'd built a reputation as one of Atlanta's most promising young interior designers, was being emptied, box by box. You won't regret this, Derrick said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Once we're married, you can focus on our home, on building our life together. No more stressing about client deadlines and contractor disputes. Maya leaned back against him, trying to ignore the knot of uncertainty in her stomach. I love my work, Derrick, and you'll love being Mrs. Donovan even more, he assured her, kissing her neck. Besides, Donovan Enterprises is expanding. I need you by my side, not distracted by this hobby. Hobby. The word stung, but Maya let it go. Derrick was ambitious, driven. It was what had attracted her to him in the first place. When they'd met at a charity gala 18 months ago, she'd been immediately drawn to his confidence, his vision for transforming Atlanta's skyline, and he'd been captivated by her talent, her beauty, her connections through her mother's established design firm. Trust me, he whispered. I'm going to give you the world. Later that evening, as they celebrated their engagement with friends at Derrick's penthouse, Maya found herself alone on the balcony with her mother. You're sure about this? Eloise asked, her eyes searching Maya's face. At 62, Eloise Montgomery remained a striking figure, tall and elegant, with silver-streaked locks framing a face that had seen both struggle and triumph. I love him, Mom, Maya replied, though she knew that wasn't really an answer. Eloise nodded slowly. Love is necessary, but not sufficient, baby. I loved your father too. Maya sighed. Her parents' divorce when she was 8 had shaped her in ways she was still discovering. Her father, charming, ambitious, unfaithful, had left them for his secretary, then fought Eloise for every penny in the settlement. Derrick's not Dad, Maya insisted. No, Eloise agreed. He's not. But he has that same hunger in his eyes, that same belief that the world owes him something. She took Maya's hands in hers. Just promise me you'll remember who you are, no matter whose name you carry. I promise, Maya said, squeezing her mother's hands. And sign the papers I left with Thomas, Eloise added. The trust amendments. Maya laughed. Mom, I'm getting married, not preparing for disaster. Eloise's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Humor your old mother. Consider it a wedding gift to me. 2 weeks later, Maya signed the papers without reading them carefully, a decision she would later recognize as her mother's final and most profound act of protection. The first 3 years of marriage were everything Maya had dreamed. Derrick's real estate development company flourished, and Maya threw herself into being the perfect corporate wife, hosting dinner parties for investors, accompanying Derrick to business functions, redecorating their Buckhead mansion to showcase his success. If sometimes she missed the creative fulfillment of her design work, she pushed those feelings aside. If occasionally Derrick dismissed her suggestions about his projects, she told herself he was just stressed. If his business trips grew more frequent and his late nights at the office more common, she convinced herself it was the price of success. Then Eloise was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Don't put your life on hold for me, her mother insisted from her hospital bed. I've had a good run. I'm not going anywhere, Maya promised, holding her mother's hand through the long nights of pain. Derrick was less understanding. You can't spend every day at the hospital, he complained after Maya missed an important dinner with potential investors. I needed you there tonight. My mother is dying, Maya said, her voice breaking. And my business is living, Derrick countered. Life goes on, Maya. You need to remember your priorities. The words hit her like a physical blow. For the first time, she saw something cold and calculating in her husband's eyes. Something that valued profit over compassion, appearance over substance. Eloise died 3 weeks later. At the funeral, Derrick stood beside Maya, the picture of a supportive husband. But as soon as they returned home, he was on his phone, arranging meetings, making deals. I was thinking, Maya said tentatively, watching him pace the living room. Maybe I could reopen my design studio. Now that Mom's gone, I need something to focus on. Derrick barely looked up from his phone. Don't be ridiculous. You've been out of the business for years. Besides, I'm about to break ground on a major new development. I need you focused on supporting that. What development? Maya asked, realizing how little she knew about his current projects. Donovan Heights, he replied, a hint of excitement breaking through his usual controlled demeanor. Mixed-use luxury high-rise in Midtown. It's going to put us on the map in a whole new way. That sounds amazing, Maya said, genuinely impressed. How did you secure the financing? Last month you said the banks were being difficult. A flicker of something, annoyance? Guilt? Crossed Derrick's face. I leveraged some assets. What assets? That investment fund your mother left you, he said casually. The one you rolled into the company last year. Maya stared at him. You used my inheritance for Donovan Heights without telling me? Our inheritance, Derrick corrected. Our company. Our future. Don't make this into something it's not, Maya. She wanted to argue, to remind him that the Montgomery Investment Fund had been separate from their joint assets, that her mother had specifically warned her to keep it independent. But the fight seemed too big, too daunting in the wake of her grief. You're right, she said finally, the words tasting like ash. Our future. That night, as Derrick slept beside her, Maya stared at the ceiling and heard her mother's voice. Remember who you are, no matter whose name you carry. But who was she now? Not the promising designer she'd once been. Not the daughter who could seek her mother's counsel. Just Mrs. Derrick Donovan, corporate wife, arm candy, silent partner. The years that followed marked a slow, steady erosion of Maya's sense of self. Derrick's success grew, and with it, his control over every aspect of their lives. Donovan Heights rose from the ground, 38 stories of luxury apartments, high-end retail, and exclusive office space. Maya watched from the sidelines as Derrick took all the credit, never once acknowledging that the project existed because of her family's investment. You have the perfect life, her friends would say, eyeing her designer clothes, her flawless makeup, her apparently devoted husband. Only Zora saw through the facade. This isn't you, her sister said bluntly during one of their rare lunches without Derrick. At 38, Zora was 2 years younger than Maya but seemed decades more self-possessed. She'd built a successful event planning business and never minced words, especially with her sister. "What do you mean?" Maya asked, though she knew exactly what Zora meant. "The Maya I grew up with had opinions, passions, a voice." Zora leaned forward. "When's the last time you designed anything? When's the last time you made a decision Derrick didn't approve first?" Maya stirred her untouched salad. "Marriage is about compromise. Compromise is a two-way street," Zora countered. "From where I'm sitting, you're the only one giving up anything." "That's not fair," Maya protested weakly. "Derrick works hard. He provides." "Provides what?" "A gilded cage." Zora's eyes softened. "Maya, do you even know what's in Mom's trust? Have you ever read the documents?" Maya looked away. "Derrick handles the finances." Zora's sigh held years of frustration. "That's what I thought." The conversation haunted Maya for weeks afterward. She began to notice things she'd been willfully ignoring. How Derrick interrupted her at dinner parties. How he made decisions about their home without consulting her. How he'd begun to treat her more like an employee than a partner. Then came the night that changed everything. The Atlanta Architectural Heritage Gala was the premier event of the design world's social calendar. Held annually at the High Museum, it brought together the city's elite architects, designers, and developers to celebrate excellence in the field. Maya had once dreamed of receiving recognition there. Now, she attended as Derrick's plus one, another accessory to complement his success. "You remember my wife," Derrick said to the museum's director, his hand possessive on Maya's lower back. "Maya used to be in design before we married." Used to be, as if her talent, her training, her passion were just a phase she'd outgrown. "Of course," the director replied warmly. "The Montgomery name is legendary in Atlanta design circles. Your mother's work on the West Side Cultural Center was revolutionary for its time." Maya smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement of her family's legacy. "Thank you. That project was..." "Speaking of revolutionary," Derrick cut in, "wait until you see the plans for the next phase of Donovan Heights. We're incorporating green technology that will set a new standard for sustainable luxury." And just like that, Maya was erased from the conversation. She drifted away, moving through the elegant crowd like a ghost, smiling and nodding at appropriate intervals while feeling increasingly hollow inside. She was reaching for another glass of champagne when she saw them, Derrick and a young woman in a dress that seemed designed primarily to display her youth and beauty. They stood in a quiet corner, heads bent close together, his hand resting on her bare arm in a gesture of intimacy that Maya recognized all too well. "That's Clarissa Beaumont," said a voice beside her. "Marketing executive at Donovan Enterprises. Hired 6 months ago." Maya turned to find Gabrielle Washington, editor-in-chief of Southern Design Quarterly, watching her with sympathetic eyes. "I see," Maya said, her voice remarkably steady considering she felt like the floor was tilting beneath her feet. "I've always wondered," Gabrielle continued, her tone casual but her gaze sharp, "why you stepped away from design. Your renovation of the Peachtree Victorian was brilliant. Such a perfect balance of historical preservation and modern functionality." The compliment, so unexpected and so specific to work Maya had done nearly a decade ago, brought tears to her eyes. "You remember that?" "Of course," Gabrielle replied. "Talent like yours doesn't come along often. The industry lost something valuable when you left." Before Maya could respond, Derrick appeared at her side, Clarissa trailing behind him. "There you are," he said, his tone suggesting mild irritation at having to search for her. "I want you to meet Clarissa Beaumont, our new marketing director." "Clarissa, my wife, Maya." "So nice to meet you," Clarissa said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Derrick talks about you all the time." The lie was so transparent that Maya almost laughed. Instead, she extended her hand. "Lovely to meet you too. Clarissa will be joining us at our table for dinner," Derrick announced. "I hope you don't mind, darling, but I gave her your seat next to the mayor. You understand business." Maya looked from her husband to his mistress, because that's clearly what Clarissa was, and felt something inside her finally break. Not her heart, that had been breaking in slow motion for years. No, what broke was the chain of fear and obligation that had kept her tethered to this man. This marriage, this lie. Actually, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years, I'm not feeling well. I think I'll head home. Derrick frowned. Don't be dramatic, Maya. The awards presentation is about to start. I'm sure Clarissa will be excellent company, Maya replied, then turned to Gabrielle. It was wonderful seeing you again. Likewise, Gabrielle said, handing Maya a business card. Call me sometime. I'd love to catch up. Professionally. Maya slipped the card into her clutch, nodded a goodbye to a fuming Derrick, and walked out of the museum with her head high and her hands shaking. In the back of the Uber, as Atlanta's skyline blurred through her tears, Maya pulled out Gabrielle's card and ran her fingers over the embossed lettering. For the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her. Not just anger or hurt, but possibility. When she arrived home, instead of going to the bedroom she shared with Derrick, Maya went to her mother's study. The one room in the house Derrick never entered, dismissing it as cluttered with sentimental junk. She unlocked the antique desk where she kept her mother's papers and began to search. Hours later, surrounded by documents, Maya finally understood the full extent of her mother's foresight. The Eloise Montgomery Trust wasn't just a simple inheritance. It was a complex legal structure designed specifically to protect Maya from the very situation she now found herself in. "Oh, Mom," she whispered, tracing her finger over her mother's signature. "You knew. Somehow, you always knew. If you or someone you love has ever had to rebuild after being torn down by someone who should have lifted you up," type rising in the comments. The next morning, Maya made 2 phone calls. The first was to Thomas Blackwell, her mother's longtime attorney. The second was to Gabrielle Washington. "I'd like to discuss returning to design," she told Gabrielle, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. "Discreetly for now." "I thought you might," Gabrielle replied, and Maya could hear the smile in her voice. "I have a client who's been searching for someone with your sensibility. The Westmoreland family. They've purchased a historic home in Buckhead that needs a complete renovation. Would you be interested in meeting them?" "Yes," Maya said, the word feeling like freedom on her tongue. "Yes, I would." Thus began Maya's secret renaissance. While Derrick was consumed with Donovan Heights and, increasingly with Clarissa, Maya quietly rebuilt her professional identity. She converted a small sunroom at the back of the house into a makeshift studio, telling Derrick it was a meditation space to help with her moods. She met with clients while he thought she was at yoga or lunch with friends. She established JM Design Studio as a subsidiary of the newly formed Montgomery Design, using a small portion of funds she still controlled independently. The Westmoreland project became her salvation, a historic Buckhead mansion that needed to be transformed while honoring its architectural legacy. Maya poured everything into it. All the creativity she'd suppressed, all the ideas she'd silenced, all the passion she'd denied. "This is extraordinary," Mrs. Westmoreland said during one of their meetings, looking over Maya's detailed plans. "You've managed to preserve the soul of the house while making it livable for a modern family." "That's always been my philosophy," Maya replied. "Honor the past while creating space for new stories to unfold." As the Westmoreland renovation progressed, Maya began to feel more like herself than she had in years. She assembled a small team, talented designers who had been overlooked by larger firms, craftspeople who appreciated her attention to detail, vendors who respected her vision. She operated in cash when possible, kept her digital footprint minimal, and never once mentioned her work to Derrick. It wasn't just about hiding from her husband, though that was certainly part of it. It was about protecting something fragile and precious, her rediscovered sense of self, her creative voice, her professional identity, until it was strong enough to withstand the storm she knew would come when Derrick discovered her independence. The storm arrived sooner than she expected. 6 months into her secret career revival, Maya returned home from a client meeting to find Derrick waiting in the foyer, her sketchbook in his hands. "What is this?" he demanded, holding up detailed drawings for the Westmoreland Library. Maya's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. A hobby, she said, echoing his dismissal of her career years earlier. Something to keep me occupied while you're working late with Clarissa. His eyes narrowed at the pointed reference to his affair. Don't be childish, Maya. These aren't doodles. These are professional designs. He flipped through more pages. You've been working. Yes, she admitted, seeing no point in denying the obvious. I've taken on a few small projects. Without discussing it with me? Without considering how it might affect Donovan Enterprises. Maya stared at him, genuinely confused. How would my designing someone's library affect your real estate development company? Image, reputation, focus. He tossed the sketchbook onto the console table. We present ourselves as a team, Maya. What do you think clients will say when they learn my wife is moonlighting as a decorator? Interior designer, she corrected automatically. And I don't see why they'd say anything. Many successful people have working spouses. Derrick laughed, the sound cold and dismissive. This isn't about gender politics. It's about loyalty. While I've been building an empire that benefits both of us, you've been sneaking around behind my back. The irony of his accusation, coming from a man who had been openly cheating on her, was almost too much to bear. But Maya held her ground. I'm not giving it up, she said quietly. I've rediscovered something I love, something I'm good at. I won't let you take that from me again. Something dangerous flashed in Derrick's eyes. Again? I never took anything from you. You chose to give up your career when we married. Did I? Maya asked, memories of those early days suddenly shifting into sharper focus. Or did you systematically undermine my confidence until I believed I couldn't succeed without you? That's ridiculous, Derrick scoffed. You're being dramatic. No, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. I'm being clear-eyed for the first time in years. This marriage isn't a partnership. It's a possession. You don't want a wife, you want a trophy, an accessory, a reflection of your own success. Derrick's face hardened. If you're so unhappy, perhaps we should reconsider our arrangement. The threat was clear, but instead of fear, Maya felt an unexpected sense of relief. Perhaps we should. 2 days later, divorce papers arrived at the house. Maya wasn't surprised by the speed. Derrick had always been efficient when it came to removing obstacles from his path. What did surprise her was the prenuptial agreement attached to the filing, a document she barely remembered signing in the whirlwind of wedding preparations. The terms were brutal. Maya would receive the condo in Midtown that Derrick rarely used, a settlement that amounted to less than 1% of his net worth, and no stake in any of his business ventures, including Donovan Heights, despite the fact that it had been built with her family's investment. That night, Maya called Thomas Blackwell. I need to understand my options, she said, her voice steady despite the anxiety churning inside her. I've been waiting for this call, Thomas replied. Your mother prepared for this day very thoroughly, Maya. It's time you understood exactly what the Montgomery Trust contains. The meeting at Thomas's office the next morning changed everything. As the elderly attorney walked her through the trust provisions, Maya felt as if her mother were in the room with them, her foresight reaching across time to protect her daughter when she needed it most. So you're saying, Maya said slowly, trying to absorb the implications, that because Donovan Heights was built using Montgomery Trust assets, the property reverts to me in the event of divorce, regardless of the prenup? That's correct, Thomas confirmed. Your mother structured the trust with very specific protections against exactly this scenario. She'd seen too many women lose their financial security and family assets in divorce. And Derrick has no idea? None, Thomas assured her. The trust provisions only activate upon filing for divorce. Until then, they remain dormant. Maya sat back, a plan forming in her mind. How long will it take to prepare the necessary documents? We're already working on them, Thomas said with a small smile. Your mother made me promise to be ready when the time came. For the next 3 weeks, as Derrick pressured her to sign the divorce papers quickly and without drama, Maya focused on 2 things. finalizing the Westmoreland renovation and preparing for the moment when she would reclaim not just her financial security, but her identity. The Westmoreland project was completed just days before the final divorce meeting, when Architectural Digest published a feature on the renovation, crediting the previously unknown JM Design Studio with a masterful blend of historical reverence and contemporary functionality. Maya felt a surge of pride so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. She had done this, created something beautiful and meaningful while navigating the collapse of her marriage. She had found her voice again, her passion, her purpose. Whatever happened next with Derrick and the divorce, she had already won the most important battle, the one for her soul. And then came the day when Derrick signed the divorce papers with a laugh, confident in his victory, only to watch his empire crumble as Thomas Blackwell revealed the truth about the Eloise Montgomery Trust. 3 months after that fateful meeting, Maya stood in the soaring lobby of what was now Montgomery Heights, watching as workers carefully installed the new brushed bronze sign. The building's transformation had begun the moment the settlement was finalized. Derrick, faced with the irrefutable evidence of the trust provisions, had ultimately accepted the settlement terms rather than risk losing even more in court. The name change was more than symbolic. It represented Maya's reclamation of her family legacy, her professional identity, and her financial independence. Where once Derrick's name had dominated the Atlanta skyline, now the Montgomery name took its rightful place. "It looks perfect," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see her Aunt Vivian, her mother's younger sister, approaching with her characteristic grace. At 65, Vivian Montgomery Clark remained a formidable presence in Atlanta's business community, having taken over as trustee of the Montgomery Trust after Eloise's death. "She would be so proud," Vivian said, linking her arm through Maya's as they both gazed at the new sign. "Not just of the building, but of you." Maya leaned into her aunt's embrace, feeling the familiar ache that came whenever she thought of her mother. "I still can't believe she planned all this, that she somehow knew I'd need protection." Vivian's laugh was soft but knowing. "Your mother didn't know you'd marry Derrick specifically, but she knew men like him. She'd married one herself, remember? Your father was charming, successful, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. Just like Derrick." They walked together toward the elevators, nodding to employees who greeted Maya with a respect she was still getting used to. The trust wasn't just about protecting assets, Vivian continued as they rode up to what had once been Derrick's executive suite, and was now the headquarters of Montgomery Design. It was about ensuring you'd have the means to rebuild if necessary. Eloise never wanted you to feel trapped the way she did. The elevator doors opened to reveal a transformed space. Gone were the dark woods and masculine leather that had characterized Derrick's domain. In their place was a design that honored the building's architectural bones while creating a workspace that felt both sophisticated and welcoming. Cream walls with architectural moldings, furniture in rich jewel tones, art by local black artists, and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. "Ms. Montgomery, your 2 o'clock is here," called Tiana, Maya's assistant, a recent SCAD graduate with a brilliant eye for design whom Maya had hired away from a firm that hadn't recognized her talent. "Thank you, Tiana. Please show them to the conference room. I'll be there in 5 minutes." As Tiana nodded and retreated, Vivian squeezed Maya's hand. "Look at you, running an empire of your own." Maya smiled. "Hardly an empire yet, but we're growing. Faster than you expected," Vivian noted. 3 major commercial projects and a waiting list for residential clients in just 3 months since the divorce finalized. That's not just your mother's name opening doors. That's your talent. Before Maya could respond, the elevator doors opened again, and Zora burst in, radiating the energy that had made her one of Atlanta's top event planners. "Sorry I'm late," Zora announced, kissing both Maya and Vivian on the cheek. The Johnsons changed their minds about the venue for their anniversary party. "Again. You're just in time," Maya assured her. "We're about to meet with the potential investors for the West Side project." The West Side project was Maya's vision, a mixed-use development that would transform a neglected neighborhood without displacing its longtime residents. Unlike Derrick's developments, which prioritized luxury and exclusivity, Maya's plan included affordable housing, spaces for local businesses, and a community arts center. "Before we go in," Zora said, pulling a small box from her bag, "I have something for you. From Mom." Maya looked at her sister in confusion. "From Mom?" Zora exchanged a glance with Vivian, who nodded encouragingly. "Aunt Viv gave it to me years ago," Zora explained. "Mom left instructions that I should give it to you when you found your way back to yourself. We agreed that time is now." With trembling fingers, Maya opened the box to find a simple gold pendant on a delicate chain. The pendant was shaped like a key, with a small emerald, her birthstone, set into the bow. "Turn it over," Vivian said softly. Maya did, finding an inscription in her mother's elegant handwriting. "The key was always within you." Tears filled her eyes as Zora fastened the necklace around her neck. "She knew," Maya whispered. "Somehow, she knew I'd lose myself before finding my way back." Eloise Montgomery was many things, Vivian said. But above all, she was a woman who understood that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly made of. Maya touched the pendant, drawing strength from this final gift from her mother. "I should have left him years ago." "You left exactly when you were ready," Zora said firmly. "Not a moment too soon or too late." The intercom buzzed, and Tiana's voice came through. "Ms. Montgomery, the investors are getting settled. And Ms. Washington from Blackwell and Associates has arrived as well." "We'll be right there," Maya responded, taking a deep breath. As they walked toward the conference room, Vivian said, "You know, your mother had a saying about timing. She believed that everything unfolds exactly when it's meant to," Maya finished, smiling at the memory. "Even when it feels too late, it's right on time." The conference room doors opened to reveal Imani Washington standing with three people Maya recognized as representatives from Meridian Capital, one of Atlanta's most respected investment firms. What surprised her was the fourth person, Dr. Layla Jackson, founder of the West Side Community Coalition and a vocal critic of gentrification projects throughout the city. "Thank you all for coming," Maya said, extending her hand to each person in turn. "I see you've met Imani Washington, who handles our legal affairs. We were just discussing your unusual approach to development," said Marcus Pearson, Meridian's managing director. "Most developers don't invite community activists to investor meetings." "I'm not most developers," Maya replied, gesturing for everyone to take a seat. "Dr. Jackson isn't just an activist. She's a potential partner. The West Side Project will only succeed if it serves the existing community while attracting new investment." Dr. Jackson, a distinguished woman in her 60s who had spent decades fighting for equitable development in Atlanta's historically black neighborhoods, gave Maya an appraising look. "Ms. Montgomery approached me 6 weeks ago," she told the investors. "Unlike previous developers, including her ex-husband, she came with questions, not answers. She wanted to understand the community's needs before drawing a single blueprint." Maya nodded to Tiana, who distributed folders containing the project proposal. "What you're looking at is the result of those conversations, a development plan co-created with community input." For the next hour, Maya presented her vision for the West Side Project, with Dr. Jackson offering perspective on how the plan addressed community concerns. Zora outlined the phased approach that would minimize disruption to existing residents, while Imani detailed the legal structure that would ensure long-term affordability protections. Throughout the presentation, Maya felt her mother's pendant against her skin, a tangible reminder of the legacy she was building upon and extending in her own way. "This is certainly unconventional," Marcus said when the presentation concluded. "The profit margins are lower than typical luxury developments, but more sustainable long-term," Maya countered. "By creating a truly integrated community rather than an exclusive enclave, we're building something with staying power. The commercial spaces will maintain value because they'll serve both existing residents and newcomers. The housing will appreciate steadily rather than skyrocketing and then crashing when the next hot neighborhood emerges." Marcus exchanged glances with his colleagues. "You're asking us to rethink our entire approach to urban investment." "I'm asking you to be part of something transformative," Maya corrected. Montgomery Design isn't just changing buildings. We're changing the conversation about what development can and should be in Atlanta. As the meeting concluded and the investors filed out, promising to return with a decision within 2 weeks, Dr. Jackson lingered. "Your mother would be proud," she said, surprising Maya. "I knew Eloise, you know. We served together on the Urban League board in the 90s. "You never mentioned that," Maya said. Dr. Jackson smiled. "I wanted to form my own impression of you first. Eloise was a visionary, but she was also practical. She understood that real change requires both idealism and strategic thinking." "That sounds like Mom," Maya agreed. "She talked about you often, her brilliant daughter who could transform spaces in ways that transformed people." Dr. Jackson's gaze was penetrating. "She would be especially proud that you're using your talent not just to create beautiful spaces, but to create just ones. If you believe in building success that lifts your community rather than just yourself, share this video with someone who needs this message." After Dr. Jackson left, Maya found herself alone in the conference room, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the table where she had just presented the most ambitious project of her career. "You did good," Zora said, returning with coffee for both of them. "Those investors were eating out of your hand by the end." Maya laughed. "Hardly, but I think they're intrigued." "More than intrigued," Imani added, joining them. "Marcus cornered me on the way out. He said Meridian hasn't seen a proposal this innovative in years." Maya sipped her coffee, allowing herself a moment to appreciate how far she'd come in just 3 months. From a woman who had been systematically convinced of her own insignificance to the head of a growing design firm with a vision that extended far beyond aesthetics. "Have you heard from Derrick?" Zora asked, always the one to address the elephant in the room. Maya shook her head. "Not since the settlement was finalized. According to Thomas, he's focusing on his developments in Charleston now." "Running away," Zora snorted. "Typical. Let him run," Maya said, surprised to find she meant it. "Atlanta is big enough for both of us. But I'm not sorry he's giving me space to establish Montgomery Design without his shadow looming." Her phone buzzed with a text from Tiana. Mr. Blackwell called. "The Peachtree contract is ready for your signature tomorrow morning." The Peachtree contract represented Montgomery Design's first major commercial renovation, a historic building in downtown Atlanta being transformed into a boutique hotel. The project had come to her through one of her mother's old clients, who had specifically sought out Eloise Montgomery's daughter when they decided to revitalize the property. "Good news?" Zora asked, noting Maya's smile. "Peachtree is a go," Maya confirmed. "Which means we need to finalize the design team by the end of the week." "Speaking of teams," Imani said, "I should get back to the office. Thomas wants to review the community benefit agreement for Westside before we circulate it to the neighborhood association." After Imani left, Zora studied her sister. "You know what tonight is, right?" Maya looked blank for a moment before realization dawned. "The Architectural Heritage Gala. The same gala where, last year, Derrick spent the entire evening networking while introducing you as my wife who used to be in design," Zora reminded her. "The same gala where Clarissa just happened to be seated at your table." Maya winced at the memory. The humiliation of that evening had been a turning point. The night she had finally admitted to herself that her marriage wasn't just troubled, it was toxic. "I wasn't planning to attend," she admitted. Zora raised an eyebrow. "The hell you aren't. Montgomery Design is sponsoring a table, remember? And you're being recognized for the Westmoreland renovation." "I know, but—" "No buts," Zora interrupted. "You're going. We're going. And you're going to wear that cushiony dress I helped you pick out last week. The one that made the boutique owner ask if you were a visiting celebrity." Maya laughed despite herself. "You're relentless." "I'm right," Zora countered. "Tonight isn't about Derrick. It's about you reclaiming spaces that are rightfully yours. The design world is your world, Maya. It always has been." The Atlanta Architectural Heritage Gala was held annually at the High Museum, transforming the modern white space into a glittering showcase of the city's design elite. As Maya entered on Zora's arm, she felt a momentary flutter of anxiety. The last time she'd attended this event, she'd been Derrick Donovan's wife, an accessory to his success rather than a professional in her own right. "Deep breath," Zora murmured, sensing her hesitation. "You belong here more than most of these people." Maya nodded, drawing strength from her sister's unwavering confidence and the key pendant resting against her collarbone. The Kushni dress, a deep emerald column with an architectural neckline that framed her shoulders perfectly, had been a splurge, but tonight she was grateful for the armor of impeccable tailoring. Maya Montgomery called a warm voice, and Maya turned to see Gabrielle Washington, editor-in-chief of Southern Design Quarterly and one of the most influential voices in regional architecture. "The woman of the hour." "Hardly," Maya demurred, accepting Gabrielle's embrace. "But it's wonderful to see you, Gabrielle." "Don't be modest," Gabrielle chided. "The Westmoreland project was a masterpiece. I've been trying to feature it for months, but my team couldn't track down the elusive JM behind JM Design Studio." Her eyes twinkled. "Now I understand why. It was a complicated time," Maya acknowledged. "Well, I want the exclusive when you're ready to reveal Montgomery Design to the world properly," Gabrielle said, "including the story behind your return to the industry. Women need to hear it." As Gabrielle moved on to greet other guests, Maya and Zora made their way toward the Montgomery Design table, where Tiana and several other team members were already seated. Maya had insisted on bringing her entire staff, from senior designers to administrative assistants, a departure from the industry norm where only principals typically attended such events. "Ms. Montgomery," Tiana greeted her, eyes wide with excitement. "This is incredible. I've never been to anything like this." "You earned your place here," Maya assured her. "And please, tonight we're all just colleagues celebrating design. Call me Maya." As dinner progressed, Maya found herself relaxing, enjoying the genuine camaraderie of her team and the steady stream of industry professionals who stopped by to congratulate her on the Westmoreland project or inquire about Montgomery Design Services. It wasn't until the awards portion of the evening began that she spotted Derrick. He was seated at a table near the front, Clarissa beside him in a dress that seemed designed primarily to display her youth. Maya felt a momentary tightness in her chest, but it passed quickly, replaced by something unexpected: pity. "You okay?" Zora whispered, following her gaze. "Surprisingly, yes," Maya replied. "He looks smaller somehow." It was true. Despite his expensive suit and practiced smile, Derrick seemed diminished. The confident swagger that had once dominated rooms now read as compensatory, especially with Clarissa whispering constantly in his ear, coaching him through interactions as Maya had once done. "And now," announced the gala chair from the podium, "the award for excellence in residential historical preservation goes to JM Design Studio for the Westmoreland residence renovation." A spotlight found Maya as applause filled the room. She rose, smoothing her dress and touching her mother's pendant for courage before making her way to the stage. "Thank you," she said, accepting the crystal award. "This recognition means a great deal to me, especially as it represents my return to a field I have loved since childhood." She paused, looking out over the audience. From her vantage point, she could see Derrick clearly, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning recognition as he finally connected JM Design Studio to his ex-wife. The Westmoreland project was particularly meaningful because it represented a bridge between past and future, honoring history while creating space for new stories to unfold. In many ways, it paralleled my own journey. Maya took a breath, making a split-second decision to deviate from her prepared remarks. "Some of you knew me years ago as a promising young designer. Others knew me more recently as Derrick Donovan's wife." She acknowledged this truth without flinching. "Today, I stand before you as Maya Montgomery, founder of Montgomery Design, carrying forward the legacy of my mother, Eloise Montgomery, who taught me that true design isn't just about creating beautiful spaces. It's about creating spaces where people can live their most authentic lives." She could feel Derrick's glare, but it no longer held power over her. "This award belongs to my entire team at Montgomery Design, to the craftspeople who brought our vision to life, and to the Westmoreland family for trusting us with their home." But most of all, it belongs to every woman who has ever had to rebuild herself after being told she was less than she is. Your most beautiful design will always be your own life. Thank you." The applause as she left the stage was thunderous. Maya returned to her table, where Zora embraced her fiercely. "Mom is doing cartwheels in heaven right now," Zora whispered. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations. Maya found herself approached by potential clients, collaborators, and even a few young designers seeking mentorship. Each interaction reinforced what she had begun to truly believe, that her voice mattered, that her vision had value, that she belonged in this world not as someone's wife but as a creator in her own right. It was nearly midnight when Maya stepped outside for a moment of quiet, the spring air cool against her skin after the warmth of the crowded museum. Quite the performance in there. Maya turned to find Derrick standing a few feet away, his expression hard. "It wasn't a performance, Derrick," she replied calmly. "Just the truth." "The truth?" he scoffed. "You're building your business on my name. Donovan Heights." "Montgomery Heights," she corrected him. "And I'm building on my mother's foundation, not yours. There's a difference." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you've won, don't you? That trust fund stunt, this design firm, tonight's little speech, you think it erases the fact that for 8 years you were nothing without me." Maya studied the man she had once loved, seeing clearly now the insecurity that drove his cruelty. "I was never nothing, Derrick. I just forgot who I was for a while. The difference between us is that I've remembered, while you're still pretending." "Pretending what?" he demanded. "That success is measured by what you own rather than who you are." Maya touched her mother's pendant. "That's why you'll never be truly satisfied, no matter how many buildings bear your name or how many women half your age validate your ego." Derrick's face flushed with anger. "You ungrateful, Maya." Zora's voice cut through the tension as she appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay out here?" "Everything's fine," Maya assured her, turning away from Derrick. "We were just finishing a conversation that should have ended months ago." As she moved to join her sister, Derrick called after her. "This isn't over, Maya. You can't just—" "It is over, Derrick," Maya interrupted, not bothering to look back. "It was over the moment you decided I was disposable. Everything since then has just been me accepting that reality and creating something better." Inside, the gala was winding down, guests collecting coats and exchanging final congratulations. Maya found her team waiting for her, their faces alight with the excitement of the evening. "We were thinking of continuing the celebration," Tiana suggested. "There's a jazz club a few blocks away that's open late." Maya glanced at Zora, who nodded encouragingly. "Lead the way," Maya agreed. "Tonight deserves a proper celebration." As they walked through the museum's soaring atrium toward the exit, Maya caught sight of their reflection in the glass walls. A group of predominantly black women moving with purpose and joy, led by a woman in emerald green who stood taller than she had in years. The key pendant gleamed at her throat, catching the light. "The key was always within you," her mother had written. Tonight, Maya finally understood the full meaning of those words. The key wasn't just to survival or even success, it was to liberation. The freedom to define herself on her own terms, to create spaces both physical and metaphorical where authenticity could flourish. Outside, Atlanta sparkled beneath a clear spring sky. The city that had witnessed her fall was now the backdrop for her resurrection. As Maya walked alongside her sister, surrounded by her team, she felt something she had almost forgotten. The quiet certainty of being exactly where she was meant to be, becoming exactly who she was meant to be, at exactly the right time. Not too late, but right on time. 1 year later, Maya stood on the rooftop garden of Montgomery Heights, watching as guests mingled beneath string lights that transformed the space into a glittering oasis above the city. The occasion was the official launch of the Westside Project, now fully funded and breaking ground the following week. "You've outdone yourself," said a familiar voice, and Maya turned to find Dr. Jackson approaching, elegant in a tailored pantsuit. "This garden is magnificent." "Thank you," Maya replied. "It was my mother's concept, actually. I found her original sketches for the building when we were renovating. She had envisioned a community garden on the roof long before urban agriculture became fashionable. Eloise was always ahead of her time, Dr. Jackson agreed. Much like her daughter, the rooftop had become one of Maya's proudest achievements, transforming what had been Derrick's private helipad into a productive garden that supplied fresh produce to food-insecure neighborhoods and served as a training ground for urban agriculture programs. The investors are impressed, Dr. Jackson continued, nodding toward Marcus Pearson and his colleagues, who were deep in conversation with community members from the West Side. They didn't believe you could really bring these different worlds together. People underestimate the power of thoughtful design, Maya said. Physical spaces shape how we interact. If you create environments that encourage connection rather than separation, people respond accordingly. As if to illustrate her point, the rooftop gathering represented a cross-section of Atlanta rarely seen in one place. Community activists, corporate investors, design professionals, and residents from the West Side neighborhood, all engaged in genuine conversation about the future they were building together. Marcus has been particularly supportive, Dr. Jackson observed with a knowing smile. He seems quite taken with your vision, and perhaps with the visionary herself. Maya felt a flush of warmth that had nothing to do with the spring evening. Over the past year, her professional relationship with Marcus Pearson had evolved in unexpected ways. What had begun as skepticism on his part had transformed into respect, then partnership, and recently something more personal. He's been a valuable ally, Maya acknowledged, trying to maintain her professional composure. Dr. Jackson laughed. Child, I'm 70 years old. I recognize that look. It's the same way your mother used to look at that jazz musician she dated after your father left. Like she was surprised to discover joy could still find her. Before Maya could respond, Zora appeared at her elbow. Speech time, sis. Everyone's waiting. Maya nodded, taking a deep breath as she moved toward the small platform that had been set up near the edge of the rooftop. From this vantage point, she could see the Atlanta skyline stretching before her, the city she had always loved even when it had broken her heart. The crowd quieted as she took her place at the microphone. The faces turned toward her, representing everything she had built in the year since reclaiming her name and her power. Thank you all for being here tonight, Maya began. 1 year ago, Montgomery Design was little more than a dream operating out of a converted sunroom. Today, we stand on the threshold of our most ambitious project yet, a development that we believe will set a new standard for community-centered design in Atlanta. She gestured toward the architectural renderings displayed on easels nearby. The West Side Commons will include affordable housing, spaces for local businesses, a community arts center, and green spaces designed with and for the people who call this neighborhood home. But this project represents more than buildings and landscaping. It represents a philosophy. Maya touched the key pendant at her throat, drawing strength from her mother's legacy as she continued. My mother, Eloise Montgomery, believed that design should serve people, not the other way around. She understood that the spaces we create shape the lives we lead, the communities we build, and the futures we imagine. The West Side Commons honors that belief by prioritizing connection, accessibility, and sustainability. She paused, looking out over the gathered crowd. This project also represents a new kind of partnership between investors who understand that true value isn't measured in quarterly returns alone, community members whose wisdom and needs guide every decision, and designers who see their work as service rather than spectacle. Maya's gaze found Marcus in the crowd, his expression warm with pride and something deeper. I'm particularly grateful to Meridian Capital for taking a chance on an approach that challenges conventional development wisdom. Their willingness to measure success by community impact as well as financial return has made this project possible. As she concluded her remarks and the applause washed over her, Maya felt a profound sense of completion. Not an ending, but a circle closing, honoring her mother's legacy while creating her own, transforming pain into purpose, building something that would outlast her just as her mother's foresight had outlasted her. Later, as the party wound down and most guests had departed, Maya found herself alone with Marcus on a quiet corner of the rooftop. At 48, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove, salt and pepper hair cropped close, warm brown eyes that missed nothing, and a smile that had become increasingly familiar over months of working together. "Congratulations," he said, handing her a glass of champagne. "You've accomplished something remarkable here." "We've accomplished it," Maya corrected him. "Your support made this possible." Marcus shook his head. "I just provided capital. You provided the vision, the persistence, and the heart. When we first met, I thought you were idealistic to the point of naivety. I've never been happier to be proven wrong." Maya smiled, remembering their early meetings when Marcus had questioned every aspect of her approach. "You were a tough sell." "With good reason," he replied. "What you proposed went against everything I'd been taught about urban development. Prioritizing community needs over maximum profit, including affordable housing in a prime location, designing spaces that bring different socioeconomic groups together rather than separating them. It sounded like financial suicide. And now I understand that there's more than one way to measure return on investment." His gaze was steady, meaningful. "Some returns can't be quantified on a balance sheet." The air between them shifted, charged with possibility. They had been dancing around this moment for months, maintaining professional boundaries while something deeper grew beneath the surface. "Maya," Marcus began, then hesitated. "I know your experience with Derrick left scars. I know trust doesn't come easily after what you've been through. But I want you to know that I see you, not as a means to an end, not as an accessory to my success, but as the remarkable woman you are." Maya felt her heart quicken. After Derrick, she had promised herself she wouldn't rush into another relationship, wouldn't lose herself in someone else's orbit again. But Marcus had proven himself different in every way that mattered. Respecting her boundaries, valuing her voice, supporting her vision without trying to control it. "I see you too, Marcus," she said softly. "And that terrifies me almost as much as it thrills me." He smiled, understanding in his eyes. "We can take it slow. I'm not going anywhere." As they stood together looking out over the city they were helping to reshape, Maya felt her mother's presence like a gentle hand on her shoulder. Eloise Montgomery had protected her daughter from disaster, had ensured she would have the resources to rebuild when necessary. But she had also given Maya something even more valuable. The example of a woman who refused to be defined by loss, who created beauty from brokenness, who understood that true power came from within. 6 months later, Maya stood in Thomas Blackwell's office, signing the documents that would establish the Eloise Montgomery Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting women-owned businesses in Atlanta's underserved communities. "Your mother would approve," Thomas said, his eyes misty behind his glasses. "Using the proceeds from Montgomery Heights to create opportunities for other women. It's exactly what she would have done." "It's what she did do," Maya replied, "just on a smaller scale. I'm just expanding her vision." As she signed the final document, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the promising young designer who had abandoned her career for marriage, to the diminished wife fighting to remember her own worth, to the woman who now stood firmly in her power, each version of herself had been necessary, each lesson learned essential. The Montgomery design offices now occupied 3 floors of Montgomery Heights, with a staff of 30 and projects across the southeast. The West Side Commons was rising from the ground, already transforming its neighborhood with its innovative approach to community development. And Maya herself had transformed as well, finding a balance between professional ambition and personal fulfillment that had once seemed impossible. Her relationship with Marcus had deepened gradually, thoughtfully. 2 adults who had learned from past mistakes, creating something honest and equal. He respected her independence, celebrated her success, and understood that her work was not separate from who she was but integral to her identity. Most importantly, Maya had created a culture at Montgomery Design that reflected her mother's values, mentoring young designers, particularly women of color who reminded her of herself at the beginning of her career. Tiana was now a junior designer in her own right, handling small projects with Maya's guidance. 3 other young women from historically black colleges had joined the firm as interns, their fresh perspectives and energy invigorating the entire team. "There's someone here to see you," Zora announced, poking her head into Maya's office one afternoon. Says she has a proposition you might be interested in. Maya looked up from her drafting table, where she'd been sketching concepts for a community center in the Westside Commons. Who is it? Clarissa Beaumont. Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. She hadn't seen Derrick's former mistress since the night of the gala a year and a half earlier. Send her in. Clarissa entered hesitantly, looking very different from the confident young woman who had once sat in Maya's place at the gala table. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a simple blouse and slacks, her makeup minimal, her expression uncertain. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing until Maya gestured for her to sit. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm curious," Maya admitted. "What brings you here?" Clarissa took a deep breath. "I left Donovan Enterprises 3 months ago. Derrick. Well, let's just say I eventually found myself in a position not unlike yours." Maya nodded, understanding perfectly. Derrick's pattern was nothing if not consistent. "I've been trying to start my own marketing consultancy," Clarissa continued, "but it's been challenging. Your ex-husband has considerable influence in certain circles. And you thought I might help you?" Maya asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. "Not out of any obligation," Clarissa clarified quickly, "but because I've seen what you've built here, how you've created opportunities for women who might otherwise be overlooked. The Eloise Montgomery Foundation. It's exactly the kind of support someone like me needs right now." Maya studied the younger woman, seeing beyond the surface to the determination beneath. "You understand why this request might seem ironic?" Clarissa nodded, her cheeks flushing. "I do, and I wouldn't blame you for showing me the door. But I also think you, more than anyone, understand what it's like to try to rebuild after Derrick Donovan decides you're disposable." The words struck Maya with unexpected force. How many women had Derrick discarded over the years? How many had he diminished, controlled, replaced when they no longer served his purposes? "The Foundation's first grant cycle begins next month," Maya said after a moment. "The application is on our website. I can't promise anything, but I can promise your application will be judged on its merits, not on our history." Relief washed over Clarissa's face. "That's all I'm asking for. A fair chance." As Clarissa left, Maya turned to find Zora watching from the doorway, eyebrows raised in question. "What?" Maya asked. "Nothing," Zora replied. "Just admiring how far you've come. The Maya of 3 years ago would have enjoyed watching that woman squirm." Maya smiled, touching the key pendant that rarely left her throat. The Maya of 3 years ago was still learning who she really was. That evening, as Maya and Marcus hosted a dinner for the Montgomery design team at her Midtown loft, she looked around at the faces gathered at her table. Zora, animated as she described her latest event planning triumph. Tiana and the other young designers, eager and talented. Aunt Vivian, elegant and wise. Dr. Jackson, whose community advocacy had shaped the Westside Commons in profound ways, and Marcus, whose steady presence had become a cornerstone of her new life. These were the people who had helped her rebuild, who had seen her value when she struggled to see it herself, who had become not just colleagues or friends but family chosen through love and respect rather than obligation. As conversations flowed around her, Maya slipped away to the balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. Atlanta spread before her, the city lights twinkling against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Derrick was continuing his life, perhaps unchanged, perhaps still believing that worth was measured in acquisitions and appearances. But Maya had learned a different truth, that true wealth lay in authenticity, in connection, in creating spaces where others could flourish. The pendant warmed against her skin, a constant reminder of her mother's wisdom. The key was always within you, not in a man's approval, not in society's validation, not even in professional success, but in the quiet certainty of knowing who you are and honoring that truth with every choice. Maya looked up at the stars, imagining her mother watching over her. "Thank you," she whispered, not just for the trust that had protected her financially, but for the deeper inheritance, the example of a woman who refused to be diminished, who created her own path when conventional roads were closed to her. When she returned to the dining room, Marcus met her eyes across the table with a smile that asked if she was all right. She nodded, feeling a fullness in her heart that had nothing to do with the success of Montgomery Design or the acclaim of the West Side Commons. This feeling came from something more fundamental, the knowledge that she had reclaimed not just her name or her career, but her essential self. Later that night, after the guests had departed and she was alone with Marcus, Maya showed him something she'd been working on privately. "I want your honest opinion," she said, unrolling a set of plans on her dining table. Marcus studied the drawings carefully. "A trust structure? For young designers?" Maya nodded. "The Eloise Montgomery Mentorship Trust. It would provide financial support, legal protection, and business guidance to young women starting their careers in design and development, especially those from backgrounds where they might not have family resources to fall back on." "You're creating your own version of what your mother did for you," Marcus observed. "With some improvements," Maya acknowledged. "This isn't just about protection from bad marriages or business setbacks. It's about creating a network of support that makes those protections less necessary in the first place. Helping women recognize their value before someone else tries to define it for them." Marcus looked at her with admiration. "This is why I love you, Maya Montgomery. You don't just rebuild, you reimagine." The words, so simple, so profound, settled around her like a blessing. Love, not as possession or control, but as recognition and respect. Not diminishing her light, but helping it shine brighter. "I love you too," she replied, the words feeling like coming home to herself. 2 years to the day after Derrick had signed those divorce papers with a dismissive laugh, Maya stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Eloise Montgomery Center for Design Innovation, a teaching and resource facility that would anchor the West Side Commons development. Surrounded by community members, students from local design programs, and her growing Montgomery design team, she pressed the ceremonial shovel into the earth that would soon support a building dedicated to her mother's legacy. As cameras flashed and applause rose around her, Maya caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Derrick stood watching, his expression unreadable from this distance. Their eyes met briefly across the space, not in challenge or anger, but in a moment of silent acknowledgement. Then he turned and walked away, a footnote rather than a defining chapter in her story. Maya returned her attention to the celebration around her, to the future rising from ground her mother's foresight had helped her reclaim. She had learned that sometimes the most beautiful designs emerge from the ruins of what once seemed permanent. That sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what can never be taken from you. That sometimes the key to your freedom has been within you all along, waiting for the moment when you're ready to turn it. And that moment is always right on time. If this story of generational wisdom and reclaiming your power resonated with you, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us our mothers planted seeds of strength we're still harvesting today.